Hello and welcome to this webinar on breakthroughs in smart packaging, revolutionizing the link between manufacturers and consumers. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping notes I will be going over. First, a little bit about AIM. AIM is the Industry Association for Automatic Identification and Data Capture Technologies. We are an unbiased resource for advocacy of the effective use of these important technologies, creating a vibrant community for networking, which creates and maintains standards and other educational materials. If you are not an AIM member and are in this space, you really need to be. Reach out to us to learn more on our opportunities to network, solve industry issues, and influence the automatic identification and data capture industry. And then the AIM antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM Inc. to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM activity shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of the antitrust laws. And then just some general housekeeping notes. All participants are muted upon entering the meeting, but we do want you to participate on today's call. So if you have any questions, please send those via the Q&A option that's located at the bottom of the application screen. I also want to note that the webinar is being recorded, and if you did register for the webinar, you will receive a notification of when the webinar is available on YouTube. And with that being said, let's meet the panelists here. I will first introduce our moderator for today's session, John DePaulo from Axis.
Morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. So just a real quick introduction here. My name is John DePaulo. I am Chief Strategy Officer for Axis, which is a division of the Antares Vision Group. And I had the opportunity to work with this panel at RFID Journal Live, and we thought that it would be great if we could get the group together and, go through what the innovations in smart packaging have been. And before we start, I want to give each of the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves, introduce their company, and set the table for what we're going to be talking about today. So Ken, I'm gonna jump to you first. Do you want to just give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, John. My name is Ken Sickles. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Digimark. Digimark is a pioneer in digital watermarking technology. It's an incredibly cool technology that's used for the identification and authenticity of physical and digital things. And our customers are using it to create smart packaging for lots of different use cases, which I can't wait to dive into as we go through the presentation.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken. John, you want to hop on and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yes, thanks, John. John Romano. I head up the marketing efforts for smart packaging and RFID, the marketing support for MCC Label. We are a global label company that provides smart packaging technology, RFID solutions, and have operations in pretty much every country. And I was very, very happy to be part of the RFID Live event and glad to be here as well. So glad to take your questions as well. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Rafe, off to you for an introduction and a view from across in a far different time zone than the rest of us today. So.
Thank you, John. My name is Gert Fontaine. I'm Vice President of Information Technology for Tosca EMEA. We are primarily a customer to a certain degree, but also supplying smart packaging to our customers again. Tosca is an international pooling company with operations in North America and EMEA largely. And we supply plastic returnable assets into different customers, different supplier manufacturers, and up till retail chains, and to make sure that we provide the most efficient service in returnable assets.
Excellent, thank you. So, for today's discussion, what I want to do is really kind of go through a number of different questions about, how packaging has changed from, brown cardboard boxes or just plastic totes that held things and kind of went out through the supply chain. And they serve the purpose, obviously, of protecting information, but now they've become smart and utilizing a number of different technologies and a number of different methodologies in order to do that. So I just want to start, by getting a little bit of a definition, of smart packaging, and Ken, I'd like to come to you first from a Digimark perspective. How do you define, smart packaging, and what do you see in kind of the quote unquote Internet of packaging, kind of going on with everything having its own identifier?
Yeah, I think, smart packaging is a really intriguing concept that at its very core just makes a ton of sense, right? Think about the world that we live in is becoming increasingly digital, yet a large amount of the goods that we buy on a day-to-day basis just don't participate in that digital world. And to me, the easiest definition of smart packaging is allowing the products that we buy day in and day out to participate in the digital world in which we live. And when you do that, you open up the door to all sorts of really interesting and unique use cases that you can support with that smart packaging, right? First is, something as simple as having a package tell the consumer who's holding it in their hand more information about it, when it was made, where it was made, how it was made, the ingredients it contains, how you can use it. Just turning it into an interactive thing for a consumer rather than just, this, I don't know, box of cereal that I'm holding as an example. And there's lots of use cases across the entire supply chain, from quality control in the factory, making sure that I put the cornflake cereal in the cornflakes box, not the sugar puffy box, all the way through the supply chain, making sure that it gets stored at proper temperatures or doesn't get crushed, things like that, telling the machines it runs across how to handle it. All sorts of things that smart packaging can do. And of course, I think one of the core things that will benefit organizations that do adopt smart packaging is the data that it returns, right? Because a smart package can not only interact with the digital thing around it, it can record those interactions and send them back to its manufacturer to say, hey, just so you know, this is what I went through on my journey to the store. This is what happened to me after the store. This is how long it took me to get to a cardboard recycling facility, perhaps. So that's how I would define smart packaging and just real high level, some of the use cases, of which, there are a multitude, of course, as we think about smart packaging.
Excellent. So, you know, we start to look at different technologies and the rise of Internet of Things and lower cost sensors and things like that. And John, maybe we'll start with you. On from a technology perspective, kind of what are you seeing being adopted in the smart packaging world? And then I open this question up to all the panelists because I think everyone will have a slightly different perspective based on how they're doing things and what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from a technology standpoint, there's a few different tools that have been adopted. RFID is certainly gaining popularity from a supply chain standpoint. The use of communication through the antennas through high frequency. That's certainly there's many use cases that help with transparency and just understanding where your products are within the supply chain, how to better manage inventory. It's all adopted through the technology through RFID, and there's different variances within the types of tags and different applications that work for different types of label applications. For instance, if you're an in-mold label, there's certain hurdles that we have to overcome to be able to utilize the technology for it to work correctly. Or if you're on a can versus plastic, or a simple carton. So the technology needs to break through the barriers to be able to make the packaging accessible and usable to transmit the data. So that's one thing that we're working on. Certainly, we're seeing as a trend globally, especially within the U.S., driven by a lot of the retailers. Other applications, I would say, within technology would be serialization of product using QR as well as watermark. And I don't want to steal Ken's thunder, but watermarking is certainly a technology where you can certainly have embedded or hidden codes within the label itself. And you can use scanners to basically make the package look sort of covert or not have a intrusive QR code on it. And what's nice about that is there's security features and other things that you can leverage and utilize within the packaging itself to make it more hidden or secure through transit and for the consumer confidentiality. There's a lot of benefits and use cases there, but that's certainly another key technology that we utilize and we see as a growing trend.
Excellent. Ray, if you want to add anything that you're using, on the returnable side, and how are you seeing, packaging from, as returnables, they tend to cost a little bit more, so maybe they can support different types of technology, and they're reusable, so you can amortize that over time. But kind of what are you seeing from your view on a technology perspective?
And in terms of technology, Tosca looks at it at the moment as all of the above. There is no one silver bullet to solve all of the traceability questions that we have to a certain degree. And you're right, John, in terms of different assets, different value of assets. Of course, it's a little bit easier if you're talking about returnable assets and returnable packaging to include more sustainable technologies to a certain degree. In all fairness, we're heavily focused around IoT and RFID usage at the moment in combination with some of the barcode. But we don't exclude because we're primarily, we're both a customer and we're trying to supply traceability information into our customers on packaging and on their supply chain. We don't want to withhold them in terms of technology. But what we see is a lot of companies struggle with the plethora of different technologies available and making an actual choice. And how do we move the needle then? That's where we see some of the hurdles coming up, even for us as a supplier to a certain extent.
Interesting.
Yeah, John, if it's okay, I would just add, I think you bring up a really good point, Rafe, that when you think about smart packaging and all of these different types of sensors, which we generally break down into two categories, those that are some sort of radio signal, whether it's RFID or Bluetooth, whatever, or those that are based on a vision system, right? A barcode or a digital watermark. One of the things to think about is, your journey for smart packaging is probably going to include a multitude of those different types of mechanisms to connect your smart packaging to the digital world. So it's something to consider, what your strategy might be for that. If you're early on in the game, or if you're new to your smart packaging journey, probably the most important thing about after deciding what are the right sensors for you is, what is the right back end? And do I have a back end that will support all of these sensors and connecting it back into information within my own enterprise? Because ultimately, that's where a lot of the value is captured and delivered from, is inside the four walls of your enterprise, right? So just one thing to consider on your smart packaging journey, regardless of the type of connectivity mechanism you're going to use.
Yeah, those are good observations and kind of ways to think about things. So Ken, let me come back to you. As Digimarc has a long history in the smart packaging side, and when you think about either roadblocks to getting started or kind of what is the first steps that people should think about, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different approaches, and how do you get a process like this started? And I want the kind of the other panelists to jump in, kind of bringing their perspective to it as well. But this is a big endeavor; it's a big undertaking. How do you think about starting this process?
Yeah, and it is a really big undertaking for a lot of organizations, especially organizations who have processes and equipment that has been around for a very, very long time. I think what we have seen work very, very well, because it is a significant investment in time and resources and money, is to align the benefit of the smart packaging initiative to broader, more strategic corporate goals, right? So as an example, if there are a lot of corporate goals in your organization around sustainability, how can you create smart packaging that does a really good job of either conveying your organization's smart or sustainable commitments to your consumers, or to even making the product itself more sustainable, so that when it ends up at a recycling facility, it has a better chance of actually being recycled and not thrown into a landfill. So it's a bit of, it probably sounds like stating the obvious, right? But building a business case that has value, and then aligning, if that business case can be aligned to corporate strategic goals, the amount of support that you'll get from above in your organization, which is generally required because smart packaging will touch almost every part of your organization. So you're going to need to get buy-in from everyone, from supply chain to manufacturing to IT, right, to legal and regulatory compliance. And a strategic initiative will have a much better chance of getting that accomplished in a shorter amount of time. So that is always my number one tip for folks who are beginning their smart packaging journey.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, why don't you jump in? I know you have some good perspective on this, so kind of how do you think about that?
Yeah, just to build on, I think what Ken said, really, I think we've seen some success with what's worked well with some of our customers is starting small, making the hurdle light or easy for them to adopt and try the technology. So especially with the case of using serialization with either a watermark or serialized QR codes. A lot of companies are doing it, or customers are doing it already with static. But I think that the thinking of how we can digitize this, many people are afraid that it's a big undertaking, but it doesn't have to be. It can be done in a small scale or a controlled environment. So I think working with companies to try to test in a small way and make the barrier very easy for them, so they can get some learning and they can get some feedback, see what works well, and then hopefully they can grow that internally within their organizations. So that's been very, very helpful working for MCC, Label, and some of our core customers. So again, it controls the cost, it controls the risk, it makes the threshold a lot easier and more palatable to try the technology and see what works. So I definitely encourage companies to try to take that approach to make it more palatable and hopefully scalable within their organizations.
Excellent.
One of the key, well, a couple of key principles, and I like the whole approach of not trying to eat the elephant as a whole. It's minimal viable product. What are we trying to get out of it? Because offering traceability with all of the benefits that we're looking for in the long run, and specifically us as a company as well, and offering that same service to a certain degree to our customers. The challenge is vast, the legislation around it equally, and then everybody's still trying to learn to ride the actual bike at the moment. So it's literally baby steps. Take baby steps, find minimal viable product, and combine it with some good sense on the coalition of the willing as well. Who is very willing, who is willing to invest time and effort to get some value out of it and asking for it to a certain degree. We were lucky to find a couple of customers as well that let's say we're on board on how do we get to good and how do we get more value out of what are our assets doing, where are they going, and so on. So effectively building actually the coalition of the willing and trying to keep it as low scale as possible before you're trying to scale it up, because the challenge is vast. If we're trying to promise the world, as in any other IT implementation, big bang does not work, sorry to say. So yes, you have to take it one step at a time.
Yeah. So Rafe, I'm going to come back to you because you mentioned one thing which I think we need to think about. And when you talk about regulation, right? So we have DSCSA, FISMA, UK initiatives, Spain pallet initiatives, all of these different, what seem to be slightly different ways of looking at traceability, but almost all of them you leverage some sort of container in which to ship these items that you want to track, and you can assign context data to it and things like that. So where do you see, returnable assets or in general packaging assets fitting into, some of these regulations and how to best be able to not just put a solution in to fulfill the regulation, but getting some business benefit out of it as well?
The core of a pooling company is asset management. And good asset management, efficient asset management comes from better visibility and the best span of control they can implement. Now, all of the above technologies offer you the best, and then some go to the lowest granular level. Where is my pallet, my bin at any point in time, any location, and so on. Even if it's in a fridge, yes or no. We're literally looking at this from, yes, there is legislation, and yes, we have to adhere to it, of course, and so on and so on. But if we are only being forced by legislation, we're too late in the market. I think a lot of our competitors are preparing as well. And even we see customers struggling with it. How do we build better visibility on supply chains around food, for example? How do we make sure that end to end, from the farm until the retail and until the consumer, how do we build the best visibility? And that's where, from a Tosca perspective, of course, we provide a means to end in the supply chain itself up till the consumer to a large extent. How can we help customers in building that visibility and adding to making sure that they have at least one channel available where they can put information to a certain extent, where they can add in their smart packaging, their detailed wares to a certain degree. and where we can have a really open market model, because that's one of the biggest challenges that I see is throughout the supply chain with the different companies, different customers that we have, is one of the challenges of sharing information. If you want to get end-to-end visibility, we are talking about things moving throughout different, sorry to say, competitors in a competitive landscape. But if we're not open, if we're not willing to share that same information, yeah, then it's going to be a very difficult point to grasp everything end to end as well. So
yeah, interesting.
John, if it's okay, I would add to that the really interesting thing about regulations, I think this ties back into the question you just asked previously. Regulations can be a great way to get started on your smart packaging journey, right? The pressure to accomplish whatever regulation is being put upon you is a great way to, again, tie it to some sort of strategic initiative, right? Because now it's a must-have compliance issue.
Right.
At the highest levels of the organization. And, when you think about things like DPP, many of these regulations will just be a basis for a lot of other smart packaging initiatives in the future. So if I use the example of DPP, it really is all about getting a QR code on your package and being able to capture a bunch of information about your product, the provenance of your product, the life cycle of your product. It's going to take some time for DPP as a regulation to really take effect. But getting started now in a very, very small way by putting the QR code on your package and maybe just providing some consumer information about what the product is the beginning of that journey for you. So look for these opportunities to start your smart packaging journey, and know that most of these regulations will give the industry some time to actually adopt and mature them. And as you go through that process of maturing the smart packaging, you'll identify a lot of other benefits along the way, whether it's improved customer satisfaction or novel data sets that you never thought were possible before, right? Whatever it is going to get your organization deeper into the benefits of smart packaging as you go along. So regulations are, like peanut butter and jelly and apple pie when it comes to beginning your smart packaging journey.
Right. And the piece that I think is interesting, kind of when we talk about regulations, is oftentimes the regulatory arm of the organization is not necessarily talking to the other stakeholders in the organization, as it relates to, marketing or manufacturing or distribution. So how, from a best practice perspective and what you've seen work in the past, and again, this is for the panel, how do you transform, kind of an organization and bring in all these different stakeholders to allow the value to come up? Because if you think of it from a regulatory perspective, you get a very siloed view of what it is that I'm going to do. And then on the marketing side, they may be going in a completely different direction. But when you think about either a B2B or a B2C smart packaging solution that you can then add context data over the top of, it's a much different focus. So, how do you align the internal stakeholders, and who should people be talking to if they want to start a solution like this?
So I'll jump in first, John. One of the things that we've seen work is the establishment of a center of excellence or a center of expertise around smart packaging. And again, if we use DPP in a regulation as an example, right, while that may come in the door through your legal group or wherever compliance is managed in your organization, it's an opportunity to tap some of the key stakeholders throughout the organization to have a conversation about that, and then establish a mechanism by which you're constantly working and talking. A lot of times what we've seen is these centers of expertise end up in IT because IT is the one who has to operationalize smart packaging at the end of the day. And they're kind of used to rolling out, solutions like this across the breadth of their organization. But it's just establishing that and having a mission of, identifying maybe step one in the MVP is John and Rafe were talking about, is compliance with the regulation and what a timeline for that might look like. Having the other stakeholders that you're pulling in start to identify, well, could I use this smart packaging for some challenge that I'm currently facing, or for some opportunity that we've recognized that I want to gain advantage on in the marketplace? So that would be my number one tip. And we've seen this work in a number of organizations fairly well.
Excellent.
Yeah, to jump in and add on that, I would definitely agree. I think having a center of excellence or expertise in a company, we certainly have that within an MCC label for RFID and smart packaging. But one of the other things just to add that I think is very valuable is to sort of help with accelerating adoption and just alignment. Use process. If your organization has a process like a stage gate process, where you can build a business case and have the opportunity to show the value financially, as well as how you're achieving some of the benefits, whether it's through sustainability, compliance, that can help create some alignment across the organization at the highest levels. So we certainly have seen a success with that within MCC label with many of our customers. But using process can be a great tool to help advocate and accelerate the adoption and alignment across different stakeholders.
Excellent. Rafe, any thoughts on that?
Regulation forces us into compliance, but on the flip side, I think every company, virtually every company in the world at the moment is talking about sustainability, and then how do we make that an actual fact? Sustainability and all of the efforts that we're putting in as a company needs to be measured. The same as any other initiative, any other thing that we want to do. How do we control it? How do we actually prove the fact that we've been more sustainable as before? I see a lot of companies having lofty goals in terms of 2050, yeah, we're carbon neutral and so on and so on. But actually, how do we help our customers and all of the companies throughout the world? How do we actually help them achieve that? And how do we actually help them prove that? And that's where smart packaging comes in. Be it returnable or even let's call it that, the consumer and packaging that needs to go in. How do we prove that it is being recycled? How do we prove that it's actually being reused multiple times? And legislation is helping us maybe to force it throughout some of the stakeholders that were less inclined to actually move already or be the early adopters. But as a company, yeah, smart packaging through and through makes us better capable of managing our assets in total and making sure that we can actually prove the point to our customers that we are a sustainable company, that we are using assets that have been going around since 10 years if necessary. So yeah.
Right. And I think, as a lot of the panelists have mentioned, sustainability certainly is a big part of, smart packaging and being able to understand where things are and how they've been moving. But let's talk about some other, improvements that you can think about, and what comes to mind immediately, is, can I use a smart packaging initiative to make more effective recalls? Not that we ever want a recall to happen, but how can I utilize smart packaging for more effective recalls and management of those recalls, so recall effectiveness, and also just general supply chain visibility, and how does smart packaging kind of fit into an overall visibility strategy for companies today?
One of the examples. Oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say I could try to take a stab at the recall angle of it. I think the key to making an effective recall is making sure that you have transparency, and smart packaging can help you kind of enable from start to finish all the different aspects of it. So when you're first identifying the issue, when you're basically creating a recall plan, you've got to have some awareness to people, whether you're a consumer or whether in their supply chain. You can obviously use the data and digitize the assets. So when you have, say, a whole vat of produce, instead of recalling every single lettuce container or lettuce that might have salmonella on it, you can isolate and just track just the lot or the one particular batch that might be affected by it. So when you're using smart packaging, you can create some consumer awareness. So you don't have to scare or off the consumers. You can let them know, hey, it's just this one isolated. You can just scan the package you have, and right away they'll be able to tell immediately if they were affected by it or not. So you can really control the issue, you can control the process along the way, and make it more mitigated. You can mitigate the risk along. So I think it really, from end to end, it can help you make a more effective process, reduce the risk, and reduce the cost for the company. So that's my kind of perspective.
Excellent.
one of the examples that we are active on, let's say, is effectively theft protection. So how do we use smart packaging to prevent theft of not just our assets, but effectively goods for our customers as well? We've implemented through Tosca Asset IQ, we've implemented a couple of use cases where customers are effectively using IoT to track all of their goods because they're more valuable even than our assets, which are floating around, and that's helping them literally to make sure that their goods get to the end state, and then that there's no tampering along the way. Same with cold chain tracking, same thing all over again. How do we track and prove that piece of meat, a piece of fish was effectively kept in cold chain for the whole ride along? Smart packaging can help there to determine and effectively avoid then very costly recalls through it afterwards. So
yeah, so Rafe, that's an interesting perspective. Is utilizing kind of smart packaging, especially in the transport side, so that you may not have a recall at all, because now I know that my temperature was controlled, or the conditions that products were shipped in were controlled, and basically it's kind of preventive maintenance against potential recalls that could have happened in a less controlled environment. So that's an interesting perspective to bring to the table. So I'm sure there are people kind of on the webinar today. We've talked a lot about RFID, and John, maybe I'll come back to you on this one. There were a lot of us who were around for kind of the original Walmart RFID initiative, and kind of went on with higher cost tags and technology that wasn't quite there. And being that RFID is kind of one of the significant ways that people are thinking about smart packaging, what has changed? Are we in a spot where the technology is ready to go at this point, in 2024, where maybe it wasn't in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say, to opine a little bit on Walmart, because I wasn't as involved, maybe 10, 15 years ago when they first rolled it out, but they started with apparel first to sort of test the technology, get sort of adoption, and they've since expanded it. I think one of the drivers for that across multiple categories is they're starting to see the value in it, in reducing inaccuracies, improving their inventory controls, reducing the labor costs. So they sort of forced compliance and forced the mandate. So that was an internal decision, and I think really they started really rolling out this compliance across more categories. Only about 2 years ago, we started to see kind of the huge uptake in just the drivers for that. So I think that's the big change. I think internally, it being one of the leading retailers in America, they certainly had an internal decision to sort of take advantage and leverage the technology and sort of help kind of mandate compliance as a catalyst. So that's certainly what I think has changed. And I think the other thing too is the cost of materials, the availability of the technology has increased in adoption too for many organizations since then. So the catalyst is sort of stirring the pot and driving the, I guess, the access and the availability for the technology. And I think what's interesting is Walmart's only the start. We're seeing more other retailers jump on the bandwagon, and they're attending shows. They're interested. They're following the mandate. So it's only going to continue to grow. And that's why we think is going to change, not just within Walmart, but within other major retailers. Dick's Sporting Goods, Target, Home Depot, they're all looking into how they can leverage RFID technology next. So it's coming, and there's going to be a big wave coming soon.
Thank you. And Ken, let me come to you on this one. From a Digimarc perspective, kind of in the new world of supply chain, where you may either just be a brand owner, and I'm have third parties packaging on my behalf, or I have a mix of I get the packaging done and I have third parties packaging. How do you see technology from a data management and data sharing perspective playing in being able to get the information kind of to all these third parties that may be doing work on your behalf? Is that something that you guys think about, and some best practices in getting that particular process started?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, that the information inside your enterprise is really going to power your smart packaging. And the data you capture as well will power better decisions in the future for you. And there's two sides to the coin. There is both post product creation or assembly, right? So if you've got partners in your supply chain, some are doing your printing for you, some are creating your actual packaging for you. They're going to need data and information from you. It could be about the identification you're using in your smart packaging tag, right? So whether it's a QR code or a digital watermark or a data matrix code, right? They might need a serial number from you, and you're going to have a way to reliably share that information with your packaging partners. By the same token, one of the other things that you need to think about, and this kind of goes back to the question we were just talking about, supply chain visibility and recalls, information from your suppliers, your raw material suppliers who are bringing you information. So the net of it is you've got to have a strategy to have a data platform, a back end, putting it very simply, and apologies to all of the engineers on the phone, but a mechanism by which to bring data into your organization, have the data created in your organization, and be able to share that out to your partners and ultimately to regulatory bodies or consumers or waste facilities, wherever that data is going to be needed. So it's a critical part of your smart packaging journey. It was easy for me to say. And it's one you can't overlook. And again, like everything else we talked about earlier, you can start small there. If you have a specific use case, I'll take factory quality assurance just as an example, right? If I go back to don't put the cornflakes in the sugar puffy box, right? Well, you've got to have information from your PLM system in real time available to the equipment that is monitoring your solution. So just start there. Figure out the mechanism by which to get that data out of that PLM system, which for most of us is probably an antiquated system that wasn't meant to be connected in real time to lots of different things, right? How to connect all of your machine vision equipment to that data and give it access. And now what you've done is you've solved a very big problem from a use case perspective, but at the same time, you've solved some technical challenges that you can build on in your organization for the future. So yeah, don't forget about the data, how to ingest it, how to share it out, and start small.
So Rafe, when you look at data sharing and things like that from a pooling perspective in kind of your organization, what types of data and what types of mechanisms are you seeing and do you see coming forward that you would share kind of with the customers that are utilizing your assets on a returnable perspective?
But first off, let's say we start with the returnable asset itself and trying to identify that, how is that moving along. In all fairness, for the majority of customers, it's an important piece, of course, if they lose a lot of them or if there is a abuse or a lot of needs of repair, for example. But we're trying to literally avoid that. If we look at data, we're trying to assemble everything in terms of asset management data to the best extent that we can openly share with our customers what is happening. What is the flow-through ratio through your plants, for example? And if the customer is scanning in and out, they're using RFID, they're also scanning our assets in and out. We can go to automatic fulfillment, for example, and customer doesn't need to order anymore. Suddenly they become a part of our supply chain in which we can automatically fulfill already. If we look at it from a data sharing perspective, we're trying to share as much as possible on the assets themselves, but the importance is, how do you keep track? How do you keep a span of control? Whereas customers are not necessarily ingraining all of our products into their own system. So we need to be very open and transparent on even our asset management. How does that collaborate with their systems and make sure that we have the least amount of integrations necessary to run the supply chain from an asset perspective? Since our assets, of course, become a means to an end effectively to transport, of course, their goods. Again, there we have to be very honest and very open about our systems. If a customer decides to partner with us and not just using our asset data, but effectively also sharing a part of their product order information, at least to know what is on the pallet, what is in the crate, what is inside the liquid bin, for example. We're trying to keep it open in terms of we don't want to track everything in detail. That's where our asset management itself and the details around it can be connected to a customer order, for example. And if we share that data with any customer, any partner out there, the only partner in the supply chain can actively decipher the information is going to be that said customer, right? Because they know what is inside the order, what is their product that they're shifting at the moment. And that's something that yeah, we're trying to be open as much as possible, using standards like GS1, for example, to make sure that we get the good principles of what is the information, what is the master data, as we call it, that we need to share. If we talk about actual asset movements and product movements, we try to keep it as local as possible, so that the partner that is, let's say, effectively affected by that information can effectively decipher it, but everybody else in the supply chain is just aware of a certain logistical movement that is happening on assets.
Excellent. I think got a couple of questions that have come in from the audience, and I may jump into one here. And again, for the panel, risk reward of RFID, kind of in packaging. So do we see any risks in it? Either in B2B or in B2C, around recycling or security, or kind of there's a whole series of different things that people think about. But from an RFID perspective, the question is interesting, because it's what is the risk, what's the reward, and are there any kind of unforeseen issues that the panel sees may crop up from RFID, in end user packaging for sure.
I'll jump in with one, John, since we're so close to the sortation of plastic and reducing plastic pollutions here at Digimark. RFID is, depending on the type of material you're using, could drastically reduce the ability of your packaging to be recycled and to be reused in the case of plastic packaging, right? So, that's one area where you need to be a little bit careful. Now, in other packaging types like cardboard, right, their existing processes kind of take care of that. The RFID tags will get sorted out in the wash. And apologies to anyone who's really deep into how cardboard is recycled, because that was a butchering of how that process works. But so I do think that there is a little bit to think about, in terms of what might be ending up in the landfill based on the type of product packaging that you have.
Interesting perspective.
If we look at RFID, and I think that's stating the obvious to a certain extent, it has tremendous benefits on operational handling, and in terms of being able to actively use it through and through plants, manufacturers, whatever is happening throughout the chain, it offers a lot of benefits. It's easy to handle, but of course we still need specific gear to properly track it across the board. Whereas barcode, for example, of course, has the benefit of you can also scan it with a camera and so on. So there's more consumer devices that are capable of reading it. But operationally, we see a lot of benefits of using it effectively through and through. The only downside is, and again, stating the obvious, is of course dirty reads. So how do you avoid that you're not reading everything and the whole warehouse at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, RFID is an interesting technology, and as I when talk to people, the nice thing is you can read everything, and the downside is you can read everything. So kind of as you look at your processes and kind of make sure that when you get into this headless data collection world, your flow may need to change. It may need to be adjusted in order to get the biggest benefit out of it. So it's definitely something to think about as you undertake this journey in order to get the best operational value out of things like RFID. Another question that came in, which is interesting, that NFC as a technology, now that almost every smartphone can read NFC tags, and can we leverage that as a part of the ecosystem? And just some thoughts from the panel on leveraging NFC and kind of where that sits in the world today from a smart packaging perspective.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in first here, John. One of the things with NFC is, the benefit over RFID obviously is that consumer devices can interact with NFC. The bit of a downside to NFC as compared to a more visible technology like QR codes is there's not a ton of consumer awareness that we've seen around NFC. That doesn't mean you can't make it work. That just means that you're going to have to be more overt in your call to action for your consumer if you want them to interact with your NFC packaging, right? So, hold your phone close to this device for a surprise, right? It's got to be printed somewhere on the packaging, or in the instructions, or, in your social media, wherever it is. You've got to think about how to drive people to use that technology. That's the one downside to it. The other downside to it is potentially cost, right? If you've got really high volume items, you're probably going to find NFC isn't the best way to engage in consumer engagement over something like a QR code. Other use cases, however, for high value items where you want to take a look at authenticity or something, it becomes a really intriguing option, where the cost is more bearable given the use case that you're supporting.
Excellent perspective, John, or Ken. Thank you.
I can add on that a little bit too. So NFC, we're seeing interest, to your point, on high value items, luxury goods as well, like wines, spirits. Basically when the ticket is more than $20 to $30 for a packaged item. Typically there seems to be more of an appetite to try to make sure that there's less counterfeit activity. And NFC tag can be a great way to do that, where you're not putting on an RFID tag, so you're using the different technology to make it more hidden and covert. So it's certainly a way to utilize that to help control for kind of more luxury goods across some of those categories. And we're seeing some interest across some of those types of customers too.
Excellent. And I love when the audience participates and shares some new technology updates and things of that nature. So the RFID recycling discussion that we had, there are some tags out from suppliers. Avery, as an example, has a recyclable RFID tag available now. So this market is ever changing. So I appreciate that people are participating and adding into the conversation. I think that it's always a great thing when we get good audience participation. I'm gonna close out today's discussion just from to let the panelists kind of talk about two areas, right? So we talked a little bit about how to get started. All projects require some level of return on investment in order to get them kicked off. And the closing kind of question, which I put out there, is where do you think about, and when you think about return on investment and getting that consensus built, and kind of what's the right area to target? Is there any really low hanging fruit that the team can think about that they can point our attendees in the right direction? In building, kind of what a project or project roadmap would look like, and where can I find an ROI for these types of projects? So open that question up to whoever wants to take it.
I can take it.
Oh, go ahead, John. All you.
No, I was going to say that's a really interesting question. I think it depends on the stakeholder that's most interested in the technology first, to see how they're investing and spending. So I'll give you an example within marketing, that the area that I'm mainly in. A lot of our brand counterparts in brand companies, they're spending money on advertising. They're spending money on software to understand where their products are, where their sales look like, how are consumers engaging. So, by adopting, smart packaging, you can better enhance your capabilities and get better ROI by making your targeting more precise, making your advertising campaigns just better, and get better clicks and better results, more loyalty, more repeat sales. So the more we can point them in that direction for how this is a tool that can enhance, enable, help improve what you're already doing, that makes it more palatable. So that's one area. In the RFID area, I will say the stakeholders tend to be supply chain and logistics. So if you're already spending money with handheld scanners, with people counting inventory, and there's a labor cost to that. So by trying and testing RFID, and obviously there's there's infrastructure and aspects for all the signals and the the infrastructure part of it to get started. But you're spending money today, you can improve that from a cost reduction standpoint and more effectiveness and efficiency with inventory control So you can measure that. It's measurable, and there is a strong return. And there's plenty of case studies published. Walmart's seeing phenomenal increase in their efficiencies across supply chain, and they published a lot of that information out there. So the more you can leverage and learn from what people in your industries are doing to help you feel more confident and comfortable, that will certainly help you get started. But the ROI, depending on the stakeholder and in what area of the company that you're sort of your jurisdiction, you might have a different take on it. But those are the two areas that I've seen the most kind of traction in terms of getting a return on investment.
Excellent. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I just add to that, John. I think you're absolutely right. Identifying areas where there are programs in place to try to recapture value in some way, shape, or form, or to reduce costs, whatever it might be, is a great place to start. One of the areas that we see when it comes to either high value goods or things that either go in or on your body, where a lot of money is being spent trying to prevent counterfeits of products, because they could do harm to consumers, which brings about huge reputational damage, and there's a high cost to that, or due to cost of lost sale, right? And there are already techniques in place to combat these things. If you add smart packaging into that mix, then how does that reduce your risk? How does that increase the amount of counterfeit goods taking out of the market, which will lead to increased sales? So jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak, of initiatives already happening in your organization where smart packaging can provide incremental benefit is a great way to get started around ROI.
Yeah, Ken, I think that's a great way of thinking about it, and how can I leverage a solution that's already in flight, to make it better, as opposed to trying to start a brand new initiative from the ground up and getting traction there. There's only so many projects companies can undertake, and if you can say, I'm going to make this one better, that I think that certainly you'll get the ear of the owners of that particular project. So that's thanks for that. We have time for maybe kind of just a couple of additional questions. Ken, this actually is for you because they called Digimarc out exactly in the question around plastic recycling. In a scenario where there is no label, how does that work? Is that something where the carrier itself can be marked, and kind of some quick thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the way Digimarc digital watermarks work, we can either go into the artwork of the packaging and then on the packaging itself, or we can go directly into the substrate. So we've worked with many converters where you can actually embed a digital watermark into a plastic container for food, or a plastic bottle, right, for water or something like that. The interesting thing about putting directly into the substrate like that, if we're talking about plastic bottles, for example, not only would it support, if the bottles made it into a waste facility, better sortation for recycling, it could also support like a deposit return scheme, right? Making sure there's no fraud happening in deposit return schemes. We have one customer who's doing that. So yeah, the digital watermark is something that either goes in the packaging artwork onto the packaging or directly into the substrate. And there's a lot of different ways that we can make that happen. Interestingly enough, when it goes into the substrate, it becomes very, very durable. It is literally, I don't know, like hundreds of a micron deep, or 0.01 microns deep. My engineers are going to get mad at me for not knowing this specifically in plastic, but you can either have it very visible and create a texture in like a bottle if you want, or you could have it be very, very subtle and almost not noticeable.
Excellent. So I think, I want to wrap this one up. A couple of things that I want to just point out, to the audience around where can I get additional pieces of information, and, how do I think about these things? In order to make all of this work, and we talked about communication an awful lot, of data sharing and moving information between stakeholders, the use of standards in order to be able to do that is going to be key for any of these solutions to work. And the resource that AIM Global brings around the use of standards, the adoption of standards, you certainly can get involved in that. And the more that we all participate in that standards use of those standards and making sure that we're all communicating the same way, the easier it is going to be for all of the supply chain stakeholders to get value out of systems like this. So, I really want to make sure that, as the audience thinks about how to get started, how to get additional pieces of information, there are a lot of resources that are available from AIM Global. If anyone has any questions and additional questions that they may have for any of the panelists or myself, our information certainly is available as you see here. So just shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to start a conversation around the use of smart packaging in the supply chain. Talk in more detail about particular use cases, and with that, I want to turn it back over, and I appreciate everyone's time today and listening in and spending an hour with our panel. And I want to thank the panelists as well. I think they did a fantastic job in kind of going through, the smart packaging journey and putting out some interesting ideas to think about.
Yes, thank you, John, again for moderating today's session, and thank you to the rest of our panelists for their insights here today. Again, as John has mentioned on the screen right now, I do have all their contact information. If you have additional specific questions for one of those panelists, please reach out to them directly. Once again, I want to thank the audience for your active participation today. It was great. And if you have any other questions or comments to AIM or the team, again, I have that slide up here right now for you to jot down, or you can reach out to AIM at info@aimglobal.org, or our phone number 724-742-4470. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.